Welcome back to the Game by Game preview episode. Every single Monday around noon, 1 p.m. Eastern time, we go live on the YouTube channel, recapping every single game that happened in the NFL yesteryear, as well as Thursday night football. Speaking of Thursday night football, tonight's Monday night football, and every single Monday night football Underdog provides y'all with an absolutely free square, okay? So if you go download the Underdog Fantasy app, it'll be the first link in the description down below, and you deposit just a mere schmear of $10 with our code BDGE. You're not only going to get this free square, you are going to get a deposit bonus, and you are going to get access to the Big Dog membership available on bdge.co for the rest of the season, automatically giving you free access to it, all right? So Monday Night Football, Josh Allen literally has to get half a yard tonight, half a yard, and you are a winner with your first time on Underdog Fantasy. Go download the app, first link in description. How we doing, everybody? Welcome in. It is 1:02 p.m. Just some quick housekeeping notes, all right? One, next week, I don't believe I'll be doing the game-by-game recaps because I will be going to Austin, Texas this Wednesday through next Monday for the University of Texas versus the University of Georgia game, all right? Probably biggest game on the slate this entire season. We've got the BDG boys, and we share an office with Snapback Sports. All of us are going to the game. We got a big Airbnb. We're actually holding a live trivia event Thursday night at Victory Lap. So if any of y'all are University of Texas students or University of Georgia students traveling to Austin for the game or just happen to be in the Texas area, we will be showing out there, okay? So you can get tickets to that event at bdge.shop. If you want to come out, hang out, meet us, grab some drinks with us afterwards. And just hit us up in the comments. Let us know because we're probably going to be looking for things to do as we're there. Maybe some tailgates, maybe some parties, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, next Monday, possible that the game-by-game recap will not be happening. Apologizing in advance. But you guys are here for this recap, Week 6, all right? So let's jump in. And I just want to say beforehand, no super chats, all right? I appreciate you, Kendrick Lamar fan. I appreciate Kendrick Lamar, and I appreciate you giving me money. But please no super chats because I'm locked in on the game-by-game recap, so this is not necessarily like a back-and-forth Q&A, engagement type of video. He says, have Breece and Wilson yet to play down 5 versus Allen. I like the twofer, assuming it's PPR. If it's PPR, I feel like it'll be okay. I think with the coaching changes in New York, I don't expect it to be a long-term, great thing for them, but I do expect them to get a little bit of extra juice for 1 or 2 games, and that will kind of ride out afterwards. So, I would feel obviously a little scared because Josh Allen could pop off at any time, but he hasn't played great without Khalil Shakir and his main weapons ready to go. So, 18, 19 from him, and I think you can pull out 25 from Breece and Wilson for show. So I appreciate y'all. Let's jump into the game-by-game recaps. As always, we just go through the box scores, but I will give you a more in-depth breakdown as we do that. Just give me a second to get this sheesh proper. And, of course, if you are listening via the podcast, then there are more visuals on the screen, and it is better to enjoy what we are doing that way. Let me put Fantasy Life up on here because y'all already know I got to break down the real stats for you. Tools, analysis, utilization. We got that utilization report. That's what she's looking for right there. Game log, bang. Oh, we got to sign in. What are we doing? Sorry, I should have had this ready for y'all. But we're ready. We are ready. Let's go back to Thursday night football. And we had the 49ers beat the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, up 12 points, 36-24. Brock Purdy looked good. The big news out of here would probably be that Jordan Mason ended up getting banged up. Seems to be a minor AC sprain. They obviously have 10 days to recover, being that they played on Thursday Night Football. From what I've heard, most likely this is actually not going to be any missed time from Jordan Mason, but there is a decently high likelihood of re-injuring the injury. So obviously if Mason is active, you're playing him. If he's not, then it gets a little bit tricky behind him with Isaac Rendo, and you have Patrick Taylor here. I think they probably split work. Isaac Rendo obviously popped off for a very long run at the end of the game last week. Isaac Rendo is a dude who's like a combine warrior. He comes out of Louisville. He was in a committee at Louisville, but his athleticism is fucking insane, and that's kind of the dudes that you're looking for in a 49er backfield. But that being said, we're not going out and spending any serious amount of fab dollars on him because Mason will likely be back next week, if not the latest, I think the week after that, and then C-Mac eventually back in the picture anyway. So Grendel's probably a dude that maybe you just want to hold on to as a handcuff regardless if you are a Mason owner. Nothing to take away from the receiving group down here that you don't already know. Jawan Jennings is definitely droppable. I dropped him before Sunday's game just because when they're at full strength, he is unusable. On the flip side, Kenneth Walker, 14 for 32 and a touchdown, but again, a really strong receiving game. Like, he is getting all the work. He is getting all the passing down work. 8 catches in this one, 37 points. So regardless of a kind of weak outing for the running back on the ground, like, 8 points, if you're in a PPR league, you're looking at such a ridiculous floor. And he's putting you up, even in a bad game, he's putting you up like 20. What are we doing here, Gut? Even in a bad game, he's putting you up like 20. Like 20 points, 22 points PPR. And the blowout games are obviously coming. Like, we saw a 3-touchdown game the other day. So obviously, Kenneth Walker's been a smash. DK Metcalf was like couple fingertips away from just massive games, some penalties, whatever. So down game happened, but I don't expect that to be the norm. As we move on to the Bears and the Jaguars, this was kind of crazy here, man. Out in London, T-Law and the Jaguars looked terrible. I will say this was definitely not as bad of a game from T-Law as like it probably could have been. His receivers absolutely killed him. Gabe Davis had multiple drops that would have been huge plays. Brian Thomas had an uncharacteristic drop in the end zone. Like, I think there was 3 or 4 touchdowns legitimately that were dropped for Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. So should have been a much better day. I'd like to say that, but also like this continues to happen. So they have to like win these games eventually. They have to make these plays eventually. It's easy to just say like, oh, those are not predictive going forward. But like for the Jags, maybe it is. All right. So we have a bad game from T-Law and the Jags, obviously. The backfield here, now Tank Bigsby was kind of like right on Travis Etienne's ass. Etienne ended up rushing 3 times, -1 yards, and he pulled his hamstring, apparently. He kind of like went into the game with a shoulder injury, ended up pulling his hamstring, and we don't know if it's significant or if he's... excuse me, going to miss time or anything, but that obviously means Tank Bigsby is going to step in and play a bigger role if he does miss time. Now, one thing to note, though, is like Tank Bigsby, I think last week, this is a crazy stat, but I believe Tank Bigsby caught his second ever reception last week in the NFL. I think that actually is a lie. I think I'm fucking lying. I feel like he caught a couple balls last year unless he dropped a bunch of them. But we want to look at the target splits here, and we want to look at the route run split here because Tank Bigsby, like they got down big, so it wasn't game script for Tank Bigsby. So we saw Dearness Johnson come in and step into like the Travis Etienne route running role, right? So he ran 56% of the routes in that backfield. So what that tells me is like they don't trust Tank Bigsby to be the pass catcher whatsoever. So if they're trailing, which they probably will be a lot because their defense is abysmal, or they're in 3rd and longs or long down distance, as you could see on the right here, Dearness Johnson took 77% of the long down and distance snaps. That's kind of a problem for Tank Bigsby's upside. So he's still, regardless of what ETN is doing, like still needs to get it done on the ground in order to be, you know, the upside player that we want him to be. Because 16% of the routes in a game where Travis Etienne went out is concerning for his upside for sure. So he can still get it done and, you know, go 17 for 80 and a touchdown on the ground. But I wouldn't really expect more than like 1 or 2 catches in a game for Mr. Tank. And, you know, as I've been telling you pretty much every Monday when I do these recaps, I go through the normal box scores, but I try to give you as much like real value and predictable value like this, like short down and distance, long down distance snaps. All of these stats are available on fantasylife.com. If you go grab a membership, I think it's $100 for a literal calendar year. So if you buy it today, you'll have it all the way through week 6 of next year. And if you use code BDGE on fantasylife.com as you check out, that's going to be 20% off. So it's $80, and this will get you like the absolute best fucking in-depth stats every Monday morning, 9 a.m. This shit goes live. So if you are trying to make sit-start decisions, if you're trying to make waiver wire decisions, like this is some of the most useful data that you can make those decisions off of. So I could not recommend getting a membership to Fantasy Life more so than like anything else right now in thy industry. All right. So that's what's going on with the Jaguars receivers. Evan Ingram made his return, 10 catches. You love to see that as like a security blanket. Gabe Davis, that's some bull. If you played against Gabe Davis, I feel for you. 5 for 45 and 2 touchdowns. Like he was abysmal in this game. but ended up scoring a lot of points. Christian Kirk, letdown game. Brian Thomas, letdown game as well. Again, like some drops there for BTJ. I'm not nervous about starting him going forward. Caleb had probably his best game of the season so far. The Bears are like in a tricky spot where they're obviously coming into their own. They're starting to get like real chemistry between all the players. Their passing game is working. Their ground game looks phenomenal. But it's been on the back of playing against like the stone worst defenses in the NFL. The problem is I don't think it stops anytime soon. So the Bears they just played the Rams and the Panthers and the Colts before that. Then they play the Commanders and they play the Cardinals and the Patriots. Like, it doesn't really slow down until we get a little bit later in the season, which might signal towards like some of these players being a sell high after the next couple of weeks, because down the stretch it's Vikings, Lions, Niners, Vikings, Lions. Like that's not great. They start to play all their NFC North games. So we're going to do a video later this week, me, Adam, and Andrew, where we are targeting players to either sell away or buy just based on their fantasy playoff schedules, as well as giving you actual examples of packages that we would send for or send away specific players. So hopefully that video, which I think will go live on Thursday, will be like really, really helpful for you guys, because I know one of us is probably going to take DeAndre Swift coming off of these massive games and continuing to compile big games. But that end of the season schedule where you got to play Minnesota twice, Detroit twice, like those are two elite run defenses. It's going to be tough to get him into your lineup. But for now, let the fucking good times roll. Cole Kmet looking goated out here, 5 for 70 and 2 touchdowns. Only 5 targets. Caleb obviously didn't have to throw the ball too many times, 29, but he did sprinkle it around. Like you had Kmet get 5, Allen get 5, DJ Moore get 5, Roman Duzne kind of the odd man out there, unfortunately. But good to see Keenan Allen back in form. Like Keenan's now really played 2-ish full games. It was week 1 and then this week, and he's produced at a high level and saw a good opportunity. So Keenan feels like he's kind of back to form now, and I think you could feel relatively good about him as a flex play, and DJ Moore going forward because of the matchups in the next month or so. And Cole Kmet feels like a clear every week starter now that he's taking like all the snaps at the tight end position. If you look at the breakdown between, I think Gerald Everett's now like 3rd in tight end snaps. Cole Kmet, 82%. Like, look at, like, what are we doing in the beginning of the season? 33, 62, 73, 77, 80, 82. So he's literally been on an incline in terms of snap percentage and routes run for 6 consecutive weeks. And now he just had his biggest game of the season. Y'all watched the London game. Y'all saw him. He looked fucking incredible. Gerald Everett is now sub 30% of the routes run in basically 4 straight games. So Kmet is the guy there, and he's definitely a tight end 1 week in and week out going forward. Arizona and Green Bay. Yeah, I mean, another game where, I've kind of been saying it for a while now. The Arizona passing game, just something looks very off. Something is not clicking there. I don't know if it's the scheme. I don't know if it's Kyler, if he's just not the answer or the quarterback that we wanted him to be. It's not really running as much either. Overall, or not having as much success running the ball, I will say. Yeah, 214 and a touchdown through the air, only 7 for 14 on the ground. We did see a complete split in the backfield. Obviously, it's not like something that I want to run over with because they were just getting their asses beat by the Packers. So it's like we're getting our other guys involved a little bit more. Amari DiMercato has taken over the pass catching role, which is kind of a concern because this is one of the things that I was concerned about with James Conner coming into the year. And it's funny how I think back on like the conversations about old running backs, and it's like when players during the summer in particular, like before drafts start, right? Like when players are 27, 28, 29 running backs, people tend to fade them. And I think this season had started to like skew that in a way that it became a problem. Like Saquon looked old. Obviously, I was not on Saquon. He's been smashing. Derrick Henry was not a guy that I was fading. But just to give you more examples overall, like Derrick Henry, we want to fade him because he's old. Aaron Jones, we want to fade him because he's old and a new offense. And like, I think what it comes down to realistically, and it's kind of funny because it can go one of two ways. You could talk yourself into either direction here. With those older running backs, it's like you want to fade them because they're old and they're more likely to get hurt. But the other thought I have, this other thought that keeps coming to mind is like, okay, older running backs are bad picks when they're on bad teams, right? Like that is usually what it comes down to. So when you look at the guys that are excelling, the Derrick Henrys, the Saquon, I know Saquon's not actually the old, the Aaron Jones is a tough one because we didn't predict Minnesota to be great. When you look at these older running backs, when everyone's fading them just because of the age, Joe Mixon, another great example. Here you go. it's like you fade them because they're old. But if they're on a good team, I don't know that it necessarily matters. That's probably my biggest takeaway here. Josh Jacobs is another one, right? Like, they're older. We don't really want to buy into them. Had they gone and signed with like the Patriots, had they gone and signed with the Panthers, had they gone and signed with like whoever the case may be, that's a stay away because the game script doesn't help them at all. But when they're old and they're just getting volume in really good offenses, they're going to come around a lot of scoring opportunities. But the other side of the argument is like they're old and more likely to get injured. And now we've seen that for Aaron Jones. Now we've seen that for Joe Mixon. Now we've seen it. We started to see like this is the reason why you started to fade them. Like Christian McCaffrey obviously came into the season with an injury, but like these are the things you go back and forth on where I think I'm more comfortable buying into older running backs as long as I feel really confident that they're going to be in a good offense. But one of the other reasons I was scared with James Conner is we did see down the stretch last year, they started to get Amari DiMercato really involved in the passing game. And I was like, okay, maybe they start to lighten Connor's workload down the stretch this year. And it's funny, like you can get lost in all the weekly finishes for the first month of the season and just have this thought about a player and exactly how they're playing. And that just gets stuck in your mind for the remainder of the season. But it's really important to be conscious of like what's happening weeks 5 through 8 as much as 1 through 4, because that is when the season starts to like, starts to evaporate into the second half, and there are new trends and there are new snap shares and there are new all this kind of stuff. So it's very important to stay on top of these things where week 1 through 4 is not the end all be all, right? Like this is obviously not a good game script, and this is not like 29% of snaps for James Conner is not what I expect going forward. But there's a world where he does drop down weekly to 60 to 65%. And we see Amari DiMercato, who ran 53% of the routes, start to take a little bit more. Same thing with Trey Benson. Maybe they want to get him more involved. And again, like I would lean that not happening, but I do think that is a concern, something that we need to keep an eye on. If they start to like mix in other backs because they're like, we need a little bit more of a spark in this offense, maybe big playability, all that kind of stuff. Receiving, McBride ends up getting home, but again, it's like one of those you don't really want to watch, but he got there at the end of the day. Marvin Harrison, it looks like he suffered a concussion. And 50-50 chance for him to be back next week. 50-50 chance for him not to be back next week. Now, they play is it the Bears? They play the Chargers. Okay, so that's not a great game for them. Not really looking to start anyone besides Trey McBride and James Conner. If Marvin Harrison misses time, like Michael Wilson is not a real NFL one. He might get some targets and maybe ends up getting into the end zone, but he's not, kind of like, maybe not DeMarcus Robinson-esque, but like when the other receivers went down, everyone's like D-Rob's like the impromptu wide receiver one. It's like he's not built to be able to take the pressure of being a wide receiver one and get covered by other teams' CB1s. So I like Michael Wilson a lot. Y'all know that. He's my GOAT, one of my GOATs, one of my Mount Rushmores with this whole fantasy football thing. But as it relates to Michael Wilson, I'm not like dying to get him into my lineup next week. However, I am dying to get a lot of the Green Bay Packers into my lineup week after week after week. Jordan Love finally looks right, finally looks healthy. This was always going to be like the blow-up spot for him. Jacobs played well, didn't end up getting home or getting the touchdown because they had 2 touchdowns. I think both of them were the Romeo Doubs ones where he like caught it on the 1 yard line, looked like he was about to go out of bounds, but then like shifted his balance back in. And I think this could have just as easily been a 2 touchdown game for Jacobs as it was for Romeo Doubs. But good to see Doubs back on the field. Christian Watson got home here. Jaden Reed got home. So all the guys that you were kind of relying upon. Tucker Kraft had a letdown day. But again, this is like what this offense is going to be. They're like San Francisco, where you just put all the good players in your lineup every single week, and by the end of the year, they'll get home for you. Dontavian Wicks, another letdown. I apologize. That's on me. Let a lot of teams down, let a lot of people down, let my family down, my ancestors down. I'd like to say it won't happen again, but it'll fucking probably happen again this weekend. If you are in our private Q&A and I'm giving you sit-start decisions, I'll probably fuck it all up again. Dontavian Wicks. He got hurt, though. I believe it's a shoulder injury, AC sprain, and he is week to week. So there's a good chance that he misses time going forward, and Christian Watson kind of steps back into his rightful place. Not rightful, I should say, but his place as like the deep threat on this team. So again, I would continue to roll out any of these pass catch ankle though. So keep an eye on that. It's not believed to be a major injury, but those things can swell up and he could end up missing like a week if they want to play it safe or something like that. But we'll see. Regardless, Jaden Reed's a wide receiver 1. Doubs and Watson are both like wide receiver 3s. Tucker Kraft is still a tight end 1 in my eyes. So you continue throwing out the pass catchers in this offense. Colts Titans. This was disgusting. We had a last minute rule out with Anthony Richardson. I think that was just a combo of like him not being 100% and playing a really tough defense, and they felt like a 85% Anthony Richardson, who will be 100% next week, doesn't give us as good of a chance of winning as Joe Flacco right now in this moment. And that was a great call by them because Joe Flacco didn't play good enough to make you question whether or not Anthony Richardson should be playing next week, and he should be fully healthy. So I have no question that he'll be the one that they're rolling out next week. But just a bad performance overall. This was pretty easy to see coming. It felt like Flacco off of a big week against a really bad defense, and you flip the tune and you have to play in Tennessee against one of the more stout pass defenses in the NFL. Not a great matchup on paper, and we kind of saw that come to fruition. But Michael Pittman did get in the end zone after him basically going from IR to like, I'm him, and he's back on the field and making fucking possession catches in the end zone, looking like he's about to break his back. Josh Downs continues to absolutely fucking tear up the league right now. 9 targets, 7 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. So those are the 2 pass catchers that you can relatively rely on week over week. Obviously, a little bit of downgrade when A-Rich comes back, but I genuinely think that Josh Downs is startable when A-Rich is back. Like, I think them two will have really, really good chemistry. So even if A-Rich is back, I'm not going to be sitting Josh Downs next week. The backfield got a little bit more tricky because Trey Sermon ended up touching the ball more, 18 for 29 on the ground, but Tyler Goodson, 8 for 51. Way more efficient. He looks like he's kind of like shot out of a cannon, where Trey Sermon looks like he looks like he brought a fucking like a BB gun to a literal cannon fight. Like, that's the difference between these two in terms of explosion. Now, we kind of got back to Tyler Goodson catching more passes. It's just a very tricky sit-start decision overall. Again, Tennessee's a very tough defense, so I didn't expect much on the ground. Maybe we get Jonathan Taylor back. If we look at the splits, we'll be able to see what the backfield really looked like. I think it'll still be in favor of Sermon, because he got so many carries. 59% of the snaps for Sermon, 39% for Mr. Tyler Goodson. Took most of the rush attempts, but the routes run were actually split. That's surprising. 38% for Sermon, 38% for Goodson. He obviously saw 14% of the targets as opposed to 0 for Sermon, who got 0. 33% target per route run. We know that Joe Flacco loves to dump the ball off to running backs. We saw that last week when Trey Sermon caught like 5 or 6 targets, and Goodson also did. But regardless, they play against the Dolphins next week. I want to say that's a great matchup on paper. The only problem is because the Miami offense is so bad and so slow, I just imagine it being like a relatively low-scoring game overall, and there won't be like any tempo or any urgency to like put up big numbers and score a lot of points and give both running backs a lot of volume and whatever. So I think both of them realistically are probably, Miami's defense isn't great, so I think they're both startable if JT doesn't play, but I don't really feel confident in either one. I still probably lean towards Sermon because of the work he's getting, and he'll probably be the one on the goal line getting the touchdown opportunities. So we'll also, you also have to factor in Anthony Richardson coming back. The targets to the running back position is going to go down dramatically. So I don't expect any running back to get, 5 targets in a game if A-Rich is under center. On the flip side, Will Levis just can't be under center anymore. I don't know what you really do there, because it's like Mason Rudolph is behind him. It feels a little bit like Vegas, where it's like you clearly know the guy behind the starter is not the answer. Like Aiden O'Connell's not the answer there. And the starter is just not giving you chance. Like, he's the theoretical better option with more upside and more like game-breaking ability-ish, make plays on your own type of thing, but still playing horrific. You just kind of got a feel for Tennessee, man. They just don't really have anything to do here because Levis is playing terrible. Mason Rudolph is a floor play, and you could be a floor play and win games if the rest of the players around you are like good enough to win you games. And maybe that is the case. Maybe like Ridley's just being hidden right now. Maybe their defense is good enough to win them games. Maybe that's the move here. But Brian Callahan, I feel like he wants to kill Will Levis at this point. And I don't necessarily think I blame him here. So wouldn't be surprised if we saw a QB swap this week. Tajay Spears did pull his hamstring. He's just been dealing with injuries all season. So Tony Pollard will continue his really, really strong campaign. 17 from 93 and a touchdown on the ground in this one. Caught 3 balls but didn't do anything with it. With a quarterback change, I think they'll get a little bit more stability through the passing game. But yeah, arrows up for Tony P because Tajay is likely going to miss a little bit of time. We just need, I don't know, it's hard to start anybody in the passing game here in Tennessee. Texans, Patriots. Texans beat the shit out of the Patriots. Joe Mixon, welcome fucking back. Man, 13 for 102 and a touchdown on the ground, 2 for 30 and a touchdown through the air. It just looks like he looks like a different runner than he did in Cincinnati, man. I don't know if it's like the scheme. I guess it's the scheme. That's what I've been hearing around. I don't know how much I buy into that. I feel like you're just a running back regardless of where you go. Obviously, there are shotgun carries and under center carries, and it's been a lot different in Houston than it was in Cincy. When you watch him, he looks like a slimmer. He looks like a more explosive. He looks different. He looks different. Maybe it's just like the Houston Texans uniforms are a lot nicer. I don't know, but he looks fucking good in the uniforms out there, all right? So, Joe Mixon, if you have him, great. You made a great fucking pick because he balled in week 1. He just balled again, and you could probably rely on him to just be a top 10 option weekly, inside, outside, every direction possible, all right? Diggs got home 6 for 77 and a touchdown. Tank Dell 7 for 57 and a touchdown on a team high 9 targets, which was really good to see in Nico Collins' first game out there. So behind those, I think one of the questions was like, does anybody kind of step in for Nico Collins? Xavier Hutchinson got 2 targets, 0 catches there. Dalton Schultz also did not step up. So seems like you got to keep the offense condensed to Mixon, Diggs, Tank, and CJ Stroud here. And you're probably getting a little bit too cute if you're starting anybody else. On the flip side, Drake May made his first start. I don't know where I want to land on this in terms of like how I felt like he played. It's a weird game script. And I'm not sure that it's not going to be any different going forward. Drake May, I mean, he obviously provided juice and a level of explosiveness to this offense that that's just not there when Jacoby Brissett is under center, of course. And I'm pumped that Drake May is under center, so we get to watch him. He goes 20 for 33 through the air, 7.4 yards per attempt, which is a really strong number. 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, got sacked 4 times. So there was a lot of good, there was a lot of bad. Overall, definitely a positive start. 5 for 38 on the ground. Antonio Gibson, who was supposed to be like the workhorse filling in for Ramondre Stevenson, absolute fucking woke performance. 13 for 19 on the ground. That's the Antonio Gibson we know and love. He also caught 3 passes for 24 yards. But I think the bigger story here is that because Drake May is not afraid to sling the ball, I think he had like three or four separate passes of 30-plus yards, which was something we were just not getting under Jacoby Brissett. Like Demario Douglas, this was someone that we loved all offseason, and a lot of people liked him. Pop Douglas coming off a really strong rookie campaign, 9 targets on 33 attempts. That is a really strong target share. 6 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown. Kayshon Boutte ended up grabbing a nice 40-yard touchdown. Hunter Henry became relevant again. So if we're looking at the snap counts, like one guy that we were thinking about stashing was a Jalen Polk type because he was running a ton of routes, but he is just not playing very well right now, unfortunately. And even in this game, Pop played 67% of the routes, but was targeted at a heavy, heavy dose. Because if you remember going back to the summer, this was something that I talked about when I brought a Patriots beat reporter on. We were talking about, the connections between Drake May and some of the receivers. And Drake May even talked about how back at UNC, Drake May played at UNC, Josh Downs played at UNC with him. Downs was clearly, the best player on their team, the best receiver on the team for Drake May, and he targeted him at such a high rate. And Drake May said this summer, he was like, yeah, Pop reminds me a lot of Josh Downs, and the connection you already see kind of showing up. So Pop was a great stash last week and will be one of the top waiver wire ads this week if he is available on your waiver wire, because we're expecting, good games from the Patriots receivers going forward relative to where they were at. They play in London this week against the shitty Jaguars secondary. They might be getting Tyron Johnson back, who is their best cornerback for sure, but they also lost a safety on Sunday. So if he's not back, then the secondary is in even worse shape. So we'll see. But Pop Douglas is playing well. Polk fell to 69% of the routes, while Boutte was up at 76%. KJ Osborne is still out, obviously. Kendrick Bourne is now back, and they love Kendrick Bourne out there. You're going to see him slowly increase his play time here as he returns from the ACL. So that 27 to 52, would not be surprised if that goes north of 60 next week and then north of 70 the week after that. So I think there's a world where Pop works his way into like 2 receiver sets realistically, and then it's like a cycle of Bourne, Boutte, Polk out there. So Douglas is probably the only one that I really see a lot of confidence in. And I'm a dumbass, and I had confidence in the Patriots this week. So we're doing this. We are doing this game within the office. It's not even a game. It's just fucking. It's just this little, I guess it's a game we're playing, but we're all taking a minus 500 bet every day, right? We're starting with $100 and we're making a bet that's minus 500 every single day and trying to continue doing it day after day after day. The other guys are like 6 days in and they've hit every single one of them. My first one that I took was, I think it was on Thursday night. Let me see. Yeah, over 37.5. So you can alt line, you can make the line shift and stuff to make sure that the bet is minus 500. Let me put myself over here. So for Sunday's minus 500 bet, I took the – oh, wait. Oh, no, never mind. I took the Patriots at plus 17.5 at minus 468. Also took the over in this game. But this was a brutal loss. There was like special teams touchdowns. There was all this like nonsense, and there's a bunch of interceptions and whatnot. And then the Patriots, if you remember at the end of the game, I don't know if anyone was watching. I was watching because they were down 20, and I had this plus 17.5, obviously. They got down to like the 7-yard line at the end of the game. And then they're like trying to run out the clock. So they'd go first down run, second down run, and then pass the ball for a first down. So if you're down there, just kick the field goal. Like, are you trying to score? Or are you trying to run out the clock? I don't understand it. It fucking killed me. So I'm on my second bet of the minus 500 challenge, and I'm already fucking out. I'm an idiot. But I'm going to start it right back up. Fuck it. We're going balls to the wall. And if you want to track the challenge of any of ours, this is on Pickett. I've got to make this a little bit how do I make this smaller? Yeah, so this is on the Pickett app. This is on the mobile version. You have to be a pro user in order to get the desktop version of it. But the mobile app is free to download. It's free to join. You don't have to pay for anything. You could download it right down below with the link that we have down there. They're going to ask you who sent you. You could tell them BDGE, and that will take you immediately to my page, my profile. All right, so free to download the app, free to follow anybody. It's like social media for betting. So you could track all my bets that you want here. And this is our Bozo parlay. So this is actually a pretty cool implementation. If any of you guys are in, this makes a fantasy league a lot more fun. So we call this the Bozo parlay, and we just started doing it this week or 2 weeks ago. Whoever is the lowest scoring team in your fantasy football league has to collect a bet from each person for the league. So it's 12, depending on how big your league is. You have to get someone, or everyone has to put a anytime touchdown scorer from someone on their fantasy team. So you ask all 12 league members, including yourself, and they'll probably pick their best player or whatever, and you put it all in a parlay together, and you put $10 on it. So whoever has the lowest scoring points of last week has to do this. And if you hit it, which is an insane fucking bet, it's a plus 462,000, whatever, you put that money in the pot. So it's actually like a really fun thing where like you're rooting for the other guys' players to score touchdowns so that you all hit it together. But yeah, we're doing the Bozo parlay every single week. So again, if you want to tail that, if you want to see what we do for that in our Your Idiot League Mates League, again, follow me on the Pickett app, all right? Pickett.com for the pro version, but the Pickett app is free to join. Link is down below skis. Let's move over to where were we? The Bucks and the Saints. This was a travesty. I was playing against both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans on Sunday, so this was just not a fun game to watch. I know Mike Evans didn't really get home. He never really does against Marshawn Lattimore, but Chris Godwin, watching him just get peppered and peppered and peppered. He's like a raw steak. It's just nailed with pepper. It makes me sick watching it in a full PPR league. But Baker continues to he's playing a little bit of Wild Wild West ball, but like he's coming through at the end of the day. Another 325 yards, 9 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns. Obviously, he threw 3 picks. He was kind of like, I don't give a fuck ball for the first half. This game is crazy. They got up 17-0 in the first quarter, and then New Orleans came back, took the lead, and then things got blown out of proportion in the fourth quarter, led by their running backs. Now, this will be a big discussion for the waiver wire this week, obviously, because Rachaad White missed this game. Bucky Irving steps in as the starter. He has a good game, 14 for 81 on the ground and a touchdown, 2 catches, 24 yards. So he does what he's supposed to do. However, they have another running back. Some of y'all might remember him if you play in dynasty leagues. This kid out of Syracuse, fast as shit. He kind of looked like a fullback when he was playing yesterday. Regardless, he took like all of the garbage time work, and he ended up being the number 1 fantasy running back on the week. Sean Tucker, 14 for 136 and a touchdown on the ground, 3 for 56 and a touchdown through the air. My confidence level in him being relevant going forward is very low. Does this mean that they sit Rachaad White longer? Possibly. I still think when Rachaad White is back, he has a role. I think it's behind Bucky Irving, but I still think he's going to be a 35, 40, 45% snap guy here. And for them, this just opens the door for Tucker to get a little bit of work each week. I am not expecting a split backfield between these two. The game script got crazy here. It got out of hand. Like, they won by 24 points. So that entire second half, the Bucs outscored them 27-0. So what you're seeing here, I don't think is real from the running back perspective. It's Bucky for sure. And then Tucker, I think, just proved that he deserved to be on the field. But again, Rachaad White was like questionable for this game, so it ended up being doubtful. But I think there's a good chance that we see him next week or the week after that. So I'm not going crazy on Sean Tucker because Bucky's clearly still the guy here. On the flip side, we had Spencer Rattler's first start here. 22 for 40, 243 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, took 5 sacks. Now, with Rattler, what was my takeaway with Rattler? I don't know that I'm like overly impressed by anything. I do think he looked like he belonged on the field. He looks like a really strong backup. He didn't look like Aiden O'Connell, where I watch it, I'm like, the arm strength ain't there. Like, he can't lead a team. He can't, like, this is not right. Like, he doesn't look like he fit where he was. Like, he looked good, and he's making plays, and he's on the move, 4 for 27 on the ground. I think he brings like a fun kind of like a little bit of a slinger mentality to a team where Derek Carr is like no mobility, no movement. But this team's just going to have problems with the personnel right now. Like, their run game, 3.9 yards per carry, and that factors in Spencer Rattler, 6.8. So the running backs were bad. Kamara goes 13 for 40, does get home with a touchdown run and catches 5 passes, but the yardage numbers are probably going to be low with Rattler at quarterback. Now, the biggest problem they have is that they turn around and play in Denver on Thursday night football. Chris Olave suffered a concussion, so he is, I would say, like 95% unlikely to play. On the flip side, though, Patrick Surtain also suffered a concussion, and he is also like 95% unlikely to play. I just think it's going to be a low-scoring, just like disgusting game in Denver. There might be 25 total points scored in that matchup. Kendrick Miller was like leaning towards being activated for the first time, and then they just said, nah, we just gonna healthy scratch your ass again. With Chris Olave out, we could look at these snap counts for you guys. Oh, why did we exit this? We have Bub Means. I don't know. None of y'all know a fucking thing about Bub Means. I'm not going to lie. I don't know much about him either. He's a rookie, and I know that he had a little bit of preseason hype with Spencer Rattler on the second string depth chart team. Ran 71% of the routes, more than Mason Tipton. 24% target per route run rate, and had a bunch of end zone targets, had a bunch of 3rd and 4th down targets. He became like the guy for Rattler, and I do actually want to look at his profile to get a little bit more of a feel for what his. Oh, okay, he's kind of athletic. 6'1", 212, out of Pittsburgh. Ran a 4.43, which is the 92nd percentile weight adjusted speed score. Okay, we might be cooking a little bit something here with Bub Means. Again, like every Tuesday, I'll do a waiver wire show where I'll do way more research after this live stream and go into the details in that video tomorrow. So subscribe to the channel if you want to see the waiver wire video for this week, and I'll talk a little bit more about Mr. Bubbly Means. But good game from him, 5 for 45 and a touchdown. If Chris Olave misses, I'll play Rashid Shaheed with relative confidence. He had 7 targets in this one, so not too shitty of a target share. Obviously, like, just the overall accuracy is going to be a little bit down, and you need that when you're Rashid Shaheed getting targets that are 40 yards down the field. But if Olave's out, he should get a lot of targets, so I think he's still someone that I'd probably keep in my lineup. Let's move to the Cleveland Browns and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles squeaked away a win 20-16. I think there were parts that looked really bad. I think there were parts that were fine. Like, we're looking at this way differently. There's nothing that we're looking at on the Brown side of things. Deshaun Watson was miserable again. Another 5 sacks, another 0 touchdowns, another game under 170 passing yards. Jerome Ford did pull his hamstring, though, so he's probably going to miss some time. We had Pierre Strong come in, run well, 8 for 43. Deonta Foreman, 10 for 31. It would be a split backfield. There is a lot of rumblings that Nick Chubb could return as soon as next week. I still am absolutely hesitant to suggest anything about Nick Chubb in terms of his workload, in terms of how many snaps he's going to get, in terms of his explosiveness, in terms of any of that, especially running behind this offensive line. They're not going to do him any favors. So I'm not, excited. Regardless of the Jerome Ford injury, there's nobody in this backfield, even if Nick Chubb is active next week, that I am rushing to get into my lineup right away. I think week 7, Nick Chubb is for sure fool's gold. Maybe by week 10, he's like feeling a little bit back to himself, and we're seeing some of these offensive linemen get back to form. They were already on their backup center, and I think their backup center got taken away on a cart. Like, they are in hell right now on the offensive line. So there's nothing really to take away here. I don't know that I want to start any pass catcher outside of Cooper as like a desperate, 3 play at this point. And Njoku coming back from the knee injury, he was fine, I guess, if you're playing like a PPR tight end premium league. On the flip side, though, like, the Eagles were up, I want to say they were up 10-3 at some point, and then they were on Cleveland's like 20 or 25. Saquon took a run to the outside to the left, and it was like 3rd and 1, I think. He had probably 10 yards in front of him, maybe 5 yards in front of him, just to get the first down, like wide open, and he just ran out of bounds. I think he thought he got the first down easily. If you guys were watching this, like, you know which play I'm talking about. If you guys watched him, like, he just went out of bounds and didn't get the first down. It was like the easiest first down ever to get, and because of that, they didn't get the first down on the next play, and then they kicked the field goal, which was blocked and returned for a touchdown. So realistically, I think the game easily could have been like 17-3, and then it gets out of hand, and they could have had like a 24-6 or 10 win or something like that. Instead, it looks a lot worse. But this is the first game back from the bye. Jalen Hurts, 264, 2 touchdowns, plus 14 for 33 on the ground. This is what you should expect going forward for him as a fantasy quarterback, and I think even better days ahead. He had his weapons back at full strength. A.J. Brown, welcome fucking back, thank God. 6 for 116 and a touchdown through the air. We had DeVonta Smith, 3 for 64 and a touchdown through the air. Dallas Goedert pulled his hamstring as well, so that's notable. Grant Calcaterra is catching everything left and right. He's not someone that I think is like a real feasible fantasy option right now, but it just kind of sucks if you're a Dallas Goedert owner. Saquon had a bad day, but it fucking happens. Washington Baltimore. This was a really fun game. Jaden Daniels balled the fuck out, like very, very impressive. Even though they lost, he just proved that he absolutely belongs in every conversation that people have been putting him in up to this point. 269 and 2 touchdowns through the air. Only 6 for 22 on the ground, but it is what it is. Like, he still looked very comfortable in the pocket. Brian Robinson was out for this one. Austin Eckler, 9 for 21, 4 for 47 through the air. So he ends up being okay for PPR, but not much success on the ground regardless because of this Baltimore defense anyways. Terry McLaurin, another big game, 6 for 53 and 2 touchdowns. So that's a bunch of strong games in a row. He's got to be creeping up to like top 20, top 15 status at this point for fantasy wide receivers. You can continue to keep rolling him out because it doesn't look like there's a stay away defense necessarily for the Washington Commanders. Their defense is atrocious, allows other teams to score points. They're always going to have to throw the ball, so it just kind of bodes well for all teams involved. One like note I will say, like, there's nothing I can say about Zach Ertz that you don't already know. It's the same thing every week. Pick him up, maybe. He's a high floor guy, goes 3 for 17 next week. Same fucking conversation. Noah Brown. He came back, led the team in targets, 8 targets, 4 for 58 through the air. He has become their de facto wide receiver 2. If we look at the numbers, he missed a little bit of time, missed week 5, missed week 1, but now he's back to running, 72, 63% of routes, and like his target numbers have been, notable. He was someone that popped off and had really high ceiling games last year for Houston when either Tank Dell or Nico Collins missed time. So he's showing the propensity that he could put up some big games here. I think he's someone that you can kind of keep an eye on if you're in deeper leagues, is all I'll say. And again, this website, fantasylife.com, great membership on there. Code BDGE when you go cop one. On the flip side, Lamar did his thing. Front runner for MVP right now. Derrick Henry continues to do his thing. In that bozo parlay that we built, of course, I was playing against Derrick Henry in that league. Derrick Henry, like normally when you take an anytime touchdown score, their odds are like, minus 140 if they're good, plus 110 for a lot of them. If you're like, okay, probably going to score if they're a good player. Derrick Henry was a minus 265 going into this game. He was probably like minus 110 to score too. It was crazy. Zay Flowers broke out all over the fucking place, 9 for 132. I think he did all that in the first half, if I remember correctly, which is crazy. Rashad Bateman, strong game. Mark Andrews got in the end zone. How you doing? 3 for 66 and a touchdown. Still, though, I don't know that you could trust him because the routes run and the splits and overall just like passing volume is not really there. Like you're okay. We saw Mark Andrews jump up to 60%, which is his highest since week 2. How sticky is that? I don't know. Isaiah Likely is also playing 60% and seeing the same amount of targets and the same target per route run rate. So could flip flop back and forth. But listen, if you're an Andrews owner or if you still held on to him, like obviously you'd rather see what we saw yesterday than what we've seen all year. Move to the Chargers and the Broncos, and realistically, the Chargers beat the shit out of the Broncos here. They had some garbage time, fourth quarter stuff, as you could see here. Chargers were up 23-0 into the fourth quarter, and then they scored 16 points in the fourth quarter. Dobbins did his thing. Kamani Vidal, finally got a Kamani Vidal sighting. He did catch a wheel route for a 38-yard touchdown. We thought he was probably going to be more involved, but they clearly see Dobbins as the workhorse here as Gus Edwards is on the IR. 25 carries, 96 yards, and a touchdown for Dobbins. Wish he was a little bit more involved in the passing game. Like, I wish they got a little bit more creative with him. Let him run some wheel routes, but at this point, if you have Dobbins, he was such a good pickup and good draft pick for you that you basically got like a top 15 fantasy running back in the 10th, 11th, 12th round or whatever. So I'd be hyped about him. Ladd McConkey ended up going in and out of this game. I'm not actually sure what he ended up leaving with, but there's no one else you can really trust in this passing game besides him if he is suiting up. On the flip side, yeah, it's all disgusting and it's all ugly, and there's no one I'm going to tell you to start. Cortland Sutton's been actually pretty usable this year, to be honest with you. He had an insane touchdown catch yesterday. But it keeps being garbage time stuff. In the backfield, we did see Audric Esme have his first activity this year, activated from the IR. But, I mean, as you could see, the production here, Bo Nix basically doubled all the running back production by himself. So I don't think you can start any of them right now. I think Esme is kind of like an interesting stash, I guess, because I think they want to use him, but it might take a few weeks to ramp up, and then you're just holding a roster spot for that shit. Steelers-Raiders. Steelers beat the shit out of the Raiders on the ground. The team rushed for 183 yards. Justin Fields was Superman through the air, 145. 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, but he does get home with 2 rushing scores. Was also playing against Justin Fields in that league where the guy had Derrick Henry, and yes, he also had Christopher Godwin. It's not a good week for me. Najee, though, 14 for 106 and a touchdown. That was the best game he's ever played, it felt like. I have not seen him run like that in a long time. I'm definitely not getting ahead of my skis because we just had 5 super mid games in a row, and now they play the Raiders, which is a cupcake matchup. But yeah, Harris is still a low-end RB2. He's still a flex play guy. Pickens has me worried as fuck. I ain't gonna lie. I have him in that league. He's my wide receiver 3 flex right now, and they just they're passing the ball 24 times. They're completing 14 passes. They're throwing for 140 yards. Even if Pickens is the guy getting all these targets, 8 targets, something's always going on. He's always complaining or dropping passes or whatever the fucking case may be. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet this year. He's probably got a 35% target share. Guy hasn't scored a touchdown. If he doesn't make a 50-yard play down the field, he's so talented, but this offense is just absolutely slowly sucking the life out of him. So right now, I think he's sittable. I don't think most teams have the luxury. That team I have, I'm going to be sitting him next week because I have A.J. Brown, T. Higgins, Cooper Kupp, if he's back, Jordan Addison. And I had Josh Downs, but I had to fucking drop him because of all those injuries early on in the year. That's a whole nother goddamn story. But Pickens would be my 5 in that situation. I feel no types of ways about sitting him because the talent is not equaling the production here. On the flip side, we have very little talent on the Raiders outside of Brock Bowers, who, in the first game without Devontae and Jacoby Myers, and Zamir White gets 10 targets. So that was a 25% target share, 9 for 71, been a PPR monster. Alexander Madison had a good fantasy day. I know that because I played against him in that same fucking league. So even the stars who went for like 30 apiece, he had some bullshit RB2s that were like, Alexander Madison, let me just go for 20 points for no reason. I haven't done this in 4 years. But today will be my fucking day against the Pittsburgh goddamn Steelers. Yeah, I think Madison's a fine flex play as long as Zamir White is out. Dylan Lobe, people liked him a lot in the preseason as like a rookie sleeper. I believe he has 2 carries this year, and I believe he has fumbled both of them. So I wouldn't expect to see him for quite a while. Detroit, Dallas. Detroit just beat the fuck out of the Dallas Cowboys. There's just not much to say here. Everybody in Detroit got involved. Good to see Sam Laporta catch a touchdown, but I will say 1 target. He had 1 target in this game. That is not great. It was like a schemed up trick play almost. Maybe not a trick play, but like I felt like we saw a lot of that at Laporta last year too, where his production would come on like broken coverages or weird trick plays like that. And it's good to see it. I think he's healthier now coming off the bye, but I think the Laporta owners got a little lucky here, right? 1 target ends up going for 52 yards and a tugger. Not like you could do anything with it, but on the flip side, yeah, Dallas is in shambles right now. Detroit is just such a good team, and they ran into a buzzsaw. Problem is, Dallas is not equipped to play against any teams that are like above average right now. They are getting their ass whooped in basically every aspect of the game. Prescott, 17 for 33, 178 passing yards, 2 interceptions. Aiden Hutchinson, obviously out for a very, very long time. Had a sack in this game and then broke his shit. He broke his leg. That it snapped, and he's going to be out for very, very likely the entire rest of the season. So, hope he can get back by the playoffs, but from what I've seen and what I've read, I don't think it's very likely. Rico Dowdle was coming off a big game last week, but this always felt like a very trappy spot. Detroit's run defense is just so fucking good. So I was not very high on Rico Dowdle coming into this week, and I think there's just a problem overall with this Dallas offense. They don't command games. They don't get up big. They don't get into game scripts where they can give Rico Dowdle 20 carries. And be nice if they could, but they can't. And even in, like, garbage time, like, they were down so much, and they kept Dak in there until, like, the last drive or two. They couldn't get anything going in the second half, even when they were down 30. Like, that is when... that's when like the Dak, CD, Jake Ferguson stack should start to rip and should give you an unnecessary extra like 20 fantasy points, but they couldn't even get that done. So disappointing. Jalen Tolbert, 4 for 43, relatively disappointing day. He did have a throw deep that he probably could have caught. I think the light got in his eyes or some bullshit. But I have okay confidence in him going forward as a flex play. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, you know what Dallas is. Falcons. How fucking good do the Falcons look right now? We are just beating the shit out of teams. We're 4-2. We lose to the Steelers in week 1, and we're 4-2. Y'all already knew. SB through ATL. How you down? Kirk is getting into form. Here's the thing with Carolina. Like, I think one of the most important things to just understand as you're trying to get ready for your fantasy week is understanding where the injuries are happening around the league. And most people don't. They just kind of like make picks based off vibes, or like they only know, okay, Patrick Surtain is out for this one. So it's like, okay, cool. Like, you know that. The Panthers have been legitimately down the top two nose tackles, 2 or 3 of their linebackers, 1 of their safeties. They were already a bad defense. Those personnel players were bad, but now they're playing with their second string defense in most of the holes. So they're not the same defense. They are a much worse version of a bad defense. That is where teams just absolutely rip other teams apart. So I'm trying to stay on top of that all week. So a lot of the analysis I'll give throughout the week in the running back rankings videos, the wide receiver rankings videos, the Q&A that I do every Saturday for all the Big Dog members, and any of you guys can become a Big Dog member on bdge.co. A lot of that factors in the injuries at play that I know about, that I'm aware about. And that was the reason I was very high on Algier and Bijan Robinson together this week, and they beat the shit out of the Panthers defense, obviously. Drake London got home again, 6 for 74 and a touchdown, and he's someone that I'm going to be talking about in that trade video pretty heavily on Thursday, all right? So make sure you're subscribed for that. We'll be talking about guys to trade for or trade away for your fantasy playoffs and suggestions of actual trades that we would make for those players, all right? On the flip side, yeah, Dalton has a down game. Obviously, that was eventually going to come. You can't just be, down points all the time and expect to play from behind and play really, really well and efficiently. Chuba has another good game. We don't really know when Jonathan Brooks is going to be back. It still might be another, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So I wouldn't get too optimistic. Plus, Shu was playing like out of his fucking mind right now. So I don't really see a world where they need to sit him. Deontay Johnson has another big game. Jatavian Sanders is playing pretty well. Seeing a lot of targets. He's not playing that well, but he's seeing a lot of targets. 7 targets, 5 catches, 49 yards. Their other tight end, I forget who it was. I think it was someone besides Ian Thomas. Tommy Tremble, maybe, I think got hurt. And Sanders will be the one there. What that means, I don't know, but something to keep your eye on. And we are on to the final game, which was Sunday Night Football, Cincy versus the New York Giants. Cincy held on to win 17-7. This was supposed to be an over game. We were supposed to have 2 bad defenses and 2, clicking offenses. Naturally, didn't happen. We had Joe Burrow. Didn't really do much through the air, but he scampered for a nice 47-yard touchdown run. Looked kind of fucking insane. It was just like a quick play where all the receivers were kind of on the right and then shifted over to the left as the play was going. It's like one of those Madden plays where it's like a play where all of them are on one side and they just run I don't know what the name of the route is, so I just make a fart sound. That's basically the route that they ran there. And it just left the entire right side of the field open. So Joe Burrow just as soon as he saw that, just sprinted 50 yards to the end zone, which is kind of crazy. So he got it done for fantasy. T. Higgins continues to be, really, really rock solid. 7 for 77. Jamar Chase, 5 for 72. Big storyline here, of course, is the backfield here. Chase Brown continues to look like 5 times better than Zach Moss does. It's actually insane. It's starting to feel like Tony Pollard versus Zeke at the end of the Dallas tenure. Now, I will say I still think Zach Moss is probably dealing with something with the ankle. And even watching the game, it felt like, I know that the snap counts weren't actually that far off because I remember looking at them this morning. But if you were watching this game, it felt like Chase Brown was in on 80% of the snaps. But wasn't true. Zach Moss played 46% of the snaps. Chase Brown, 62% of them. He just got a lot more work, obviously, running a lot more routes, got more rush attempts, just got more involved, got more targets. And I don't, even as a guy who drafted Zach Moss, I like Chase Brown a lot this summer, but it didn't seem like he was going to have a significant role. I can't, how can anyone watch that game and not be like Chase Brown deserves to double, triple the number of touches Zach Moss has? I know they like Zach Moss because he's like a bruiser and he's a good pass protector. And to be fair, he's getting blown up a lot behind the line. It's almost like Breece Hall out in New York, where it's sure, he doesn't look good, but also you can't blame him fully because there are linebackers in the backfield the minute he touches the ball, but he offers so little explosion. He feels like Mike Davis a little bit, where it's just he's kind of okay every aspect of the field. So you never feel bad necessarily about having him on the field, but you never feel good. He won't drop passes. He won't miss a pass block, but he'll never make, 12 yards out of a 3-yard hole kind of thing, where Chase Brown looks so explosive. So if you have Chase Brown, I feel pretty fucking good about his second half perspective and his second half progression right now. So he feels a little sexy right now. And on the flip side, you want to talk about a running back looking sexy, Mr. Tyrone fucking Tracy, man. 17 for 50 and a touchdown on the ground. And we've been yapping all summer. We've been yapping last week. I think in the sit start show that I did on Saturday, I pretty much told anyone that if Devin Singletary was sitting, Tyrone Tracy becomes the number one guy for me. He's the guy that we were getting so many sit-start questions about. You have to have him in your lineup if Devin Singletary was sitting, because he's such a good pass catcher. And we saw things flip there. And Tyrone Tracy caught all the passes that Eric Gray was catching last week, 6 for 57 through the air. So Tracy has taken over this really massive backfield role. And I saw a report from a New York Giants beat reporter that said when Devin Singletary is back, they expect Devin Singletary to take the Eric Gray role from yesterday. So they expect Tyrone Tracy to continue to see 65 to 70% of the opportunities in this backfield while Singletary becomes a secondary piece. I don't know. I hope that's the case. And there's part of me that wants to buy into that. I feel like Dable just loves Singletary, and I don't think we'll see that drastic of a split. I do think what Tracy brings to this offense is way more sexy than what Singletary does, but I think Singletary's been playing well enough that he shouldn't lose a gigantic role. But Tracy up to 84% of the snaps yesterday, 60% of the rush attempts, 70% of the routes, every single short down and distance roll carry, every single inside the 5 attempt, 50% of the long down and distance snaps, and 100% of the 2 and 4 minute drill snaps. That is, you're not going to see fantasy upside and opportunity like that really anywhere at this point in the season, man. So if you have Tyrone Tracy, hold on to that motherfucker like he is everything, okay? And just see what happens when Singletary gets back here. But you can clearly see the upside is even in a game when they're down and they're trailing, it didn't matter because he's a 3-down back with the skill set to stay on the field at all times. Like his upside is absurd, and he can't be game scripted out. Hopefully the Giants get Malik Neighbors back next week. Slayton would probably end up being a drop at that point. I'd maybe hold on to him, but he feels a little bit like Jawan Jennings, where it's like he's a handcuff, like a great handcuff, but literally won't do a single thing if the starter is back in the game. Wan'Dale Robinson, another 11 targets, PPR scam, 5 for 50. But overall, yeah, just not much from the Giants offense outside of Tyrone Tracy. You guys want to make some picks for tonight's game? Fuck it, let's do it. Let's ball. Anyone got any good picks for tonight's game? Little slipper stains. We got the Jets at the Buffalo Bills, or the Bills at the New York Jets, I should say. We're just not going to load right now. How you doing? Well, maybe we won't make picks, but you guys can make a surefire pick. As I said, you have this free square. Let's move this off, please. Are you opening up here? At some point, we just got to grow up. You guys can get this free square for tonight's game. Josh Allen, half a passing yard on Underdog. Underdog will load on your phone, I promise you. Sometimes the desktop app gets a little bit wonky, but I promise that thing is sitting there for you double cheeked up if you get onto the app for the first time and use code BDGE when you deposit $10 or more. You'll get a free square to get ripping. And, because it doesn't look like we're going to be able to put down any bets tonight, you can follow... Okay, we're just going to do that 6 times in a row. You can follow all the picks that I make today. If you want to just put them in later before the game kicks off, you'll be able to see that on the Pick'It app, okay? So download Underdog, download Pick'It. All those are linked down below. So just take 3 minutes after this video ends up. And those, Pick'It's free, all right? If you want to show appreciation for me sitting here and yapping for over an hour right now, obviously, I want to make sure I'm prepared and I give you guys value. And if you have been getting value from these Monday streams, that is a really strong way for you to help us out and show that support and show that that you do value these live streams and lets me know that. So I'll continue doing that. So Pick'It, download the app, free to do so. Put in code BDGE, again, free. Follow my picks, follow the Bozo Parlay, follow my minus 500 shit, and that's it for this week, all right? I appreciate you guys hanging out. I'll see you tomorrow for the waiver wire video, so subscribe for that. Smoochies.